You're watching India Sense. I'm Gaurie Dwivedi. This is your weekly dose of all that matters to the global Indian and to India's ascent. Let's get you the big headlines we're tracking for you. Warm and engaging phone call between Prime Minister Modi and US President Donald Trump as the two nations hammer out a potential trade deal that's been in the works for months now. Donald Trump's administration green-lights $680 million of military aid to Pakistan. Its aging F-16 fleet get an upgrade. Trump's Munir love continues. Dead economy, anyone? Well, big tech commits massive investments into India after Google's $15 billion investment. Microsoft announces $17.5 billion, its largest investment in Asia. Comes after announcements by Intel, Cognizant and Amazon. The United States has suggested creating a free economic zone in parts of eastern Donbass. This is part of the larger peace formula that is being negotiated between all parties. And Bangladesh announces a potential return to democracy, announces its much-delayed national elections in February 2026. Will the polls be free and fair? We ask. Our big story this week, viewers, it has two aspects. Donald Trump, Prime Minister Modi, spoke in their third phone call since India was targeted with high tariffs for importing Russian oil, even though India is not the largest, not the only country. But this happens at a time when Trump has green-lighted more military aid to Pakistan. Now let's make one thing very clear. India's ties with US are far more nuanced, multidimensional and consequential, and most certainly not limited to Pakistan. But how Trump treats Munir is important, since this is a year when India and Pakistan also had a massive military face-off for the first time since Kargil. Now, as things stand, Modi and Trump spoke on closing a trade deal after Washington said that they received the best offer from India till now. There is an expectation that a trade deal may be closed by early next year. And that would put the focus on some of the other aspects of this relationship which have been sort of put on the back burner till now. Security, geopolitical, all factors that are important but have been on the back burner. That includes a Quad summit as well that has been delayed and would probably be back on the table the moment the trade pact is finalized. And most importantly, the Trump-Modi call comes just a week after President Putin was in India. His first foreign visit since he met Trump's trusted envoys, that is Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, to look at an end to war in Ukraine. It didn't happen. There was no agreement after 5 long hours. India is the only country with direct lines of communication with both sides, which you need to have to end any conflict. And that makes India extremely vital to any peace process. Now, how does this all add up? From trade to Trump's Munir love to the larger equation where India is now an extremely important aspect is what the larger India-US equation is now all about. And let's get in a voice from DC to talk more about this. Alison Federica, who's Director of Analysis at Geopolitical Futures, joins me to talk more about how the call is so important right now and the larger takeaway. Alison, we in New Delhi feel that this call is extremely important. It really sets the pace for the talks. How is DC viewing this?
It is not an uncoincidental timing in terms of both the U.S. trade talks with India and also because it comes on the heels of Putin visiting India as well. Of course, the U.S. is going to say that it was a positive conversation. That is going to be part of their negotiating strategy with the trade talks that are ongoing. And also, politically, they're not going to admit, in the case of India, if things aren't going well.
Specifically, if one were to talk about trade talks, there has been some progress, but it's been almost incremental. How do you see that?
So as you point out, there are quite a few differences between the U.S. government and India. And what I think that DC might be starting to realize now is that I think they have underestimated the hand that India has to play in the relationship with the United States. I think India is in a better negotiating position than DC originally thought when going into these trade talks with them. They have many different options. New Delhi has different options in terms of Russian partners, Southern cooperation partners. They're not as dependent on the United States as I think Washington would like to think. And they have enough clout and power in their own right and size that when it comes to negotiating with the US, they're one of the few countries that can really engage the US and make demands as well as Washington, as opposed to simply having to go along with whatever DC asks because they're dependent on the US relationship.
That's a very important point you're making. Does that also mean that some of these sticky issues will be resolved now quickly after DC's realization about New Delhi's options?
I think that they can be resolved on a superficial level with an agreement that is quote unquote good enough. There are some fundamental points where Indian and national interests and US national interests are going to clash. And neither country is in a position where they are going to want to give in or compromise that national interest. I'm thinking primarily in the area of tech, in terms of AI development, tech advancement, tech innovation. These are areas where the US wants to become the leading dominant world player. That's reflected in the national security strategy that just came out. But India is also a leader in this field in its own right, and also has its own ambitions to be one of the dominating forces and leaders in that tech AI innovation field. So neither one is going to want to bend on that. It is in both of their national interests to kind of pursue that independently. So with things where they don't necessarily have competing interests, they can cooperate perhaps on good energy deals or some sort of technology share with mining or critical minerals. But when it comes to key priorities for the future, those sticking points are going to remain. And so what we're going to likely see is something that is progress on points that they can get along with and good enough, or working past the sticking points to the point that they don't have to necessarily come to resolution now, but they also will not be removing the long-term conflict that will likely remain.
Which brings me to ask the final question around, Alison, the kind of progress that the governments are making, the two sides are making. What about the larger India-US relationship? There are voices in Congress who feel that it isn't achieving any of its potential. And something as recent as the last couple of days, those voices, and all of them are, of course, Republican-leaning voices that are saying that.
The government-to-government talks are just one part of the picture. I think especially in the United States, private business is also a major player when it comes to how the US government engages with different countries, especially in the case of India. As we've seen, the H-1B visas and the extension for having to get through the interview process is really putting a lot of people on that visa in a compromising situation and their jobs at risk. And that innately involves private companies in the United States. And how are they going to react? Are they going to save the jobs? Are they going to pay the extra fees, the higher price, I should say, for the H-1B visa? Are they going to get rid of the jobs? So there's going to be, especially in the US and also to an extent in India, the private sector has a voice in these talks in terms of their own interests and what are they going to have to give up, or how is this going to affect their bottom line? And so the governments will be receiving that pressure internally from their own constituents and their own private companies, which will eventually be reflected in the government-to-government talks. But there's still a lot to hash out in the private sector that needs to be done before the government and government talks can fully be conclusive in terms of an agreement.
All right. Thanks much, Alison, for joining us. And on the issue of H-1B and immigration, I'm going to come to that in just a bit. Turning attention now to Trump. In fact, viewers, Trump's Munir love continues. A week after Munir stamped himself into the history books in Pakistan by bringing about a coup constitutionally, Donald Trump and his administration have approved a $680 million upgrade for Pakistan and its F-16 fleet. A move that comes at a time of huge political instability in the country. There is a dire economic situation. The move has been in the pipeline since 2021, but was kept in limbo as the Pakistan-China nexus has rattled many in the power corridors in Washington. They realize what that nexus adds up for America's interests. But it also means one thing, viewers, that geopolitical considerations, security concerns, challenges that a maverick nuclear power headed by a super powerful military chief, all of that have limited impact in this administration. What matters is the following: repeated praise for the president himself, nominating the president for Nobel Peace Prize, hiring former business associates close to the president as lobbyists in Washington, D.C., promises to provide rare mineral earth deposits to American enterprises, and investments in crypto deals with those that are close to the first family in America and their businesses. This is all that matters. It's also a reminder of how things work now. Donald Trump has met the Pakistani leadership 5 times this year, a country that is the fountainhead of terrorism, where Osama bin Laden was given state patronage, poses big threats to the world. Where does this leave India, viewers? Well, we need to prepare for the eventuality that Pakistanis may get F-16's upgraded versions near the 5th gen capabilities and superior missiles as well. We need to prepare ourselves for that eventuality, both surface to air and air to air, which may have the ability to target India without entering our airspace. And also prepare for the eventuality that Asim Munir will double down on this as the political crisis in his country worsens. And that is likely to happen in the next couple of months itself. All right, on that note, a quick break. We return with more on the other side. Stay with us. Is America still the land of opportunity, or has it become a country that picks and chooses who belongs? What began as a targeted crackdown on who Donald Trump called illegal aliens is now evolving into a sweeping ban that critics say could redefine who belongs in America across the globe. Governments, businesses, and families are grappling with uncertainty. Policies are shifting from being about law and order to shutting down the door on millions. This report tells you that it's no more just about H-1Bs or student visas. It's far more than that. Take a look.
Is anyone welcome in America anymore? With just weeks to go in 2025, the Trump administration is already preparing to escalate its anti-immigration agenda in 2026, sending a clear message to the world. Entering the United States may be harder than ever. From increased online vetting, imposing travel bans, and revoking visas, to purchasing dedicated deportation jets, the Trump administration is going all out to keep those it deems fit out of America. The crackdown is sweeping. The US has reportedly revoked 85,000 visas across multiple categories this year alone. Moreover, starting December 15th, the US will expand social media vetting for all H-1B skilled worker applicants and their H-4 dependents, adding digital security to the already rigorous visa vetting process. Not just that, the Department of Homeland Security has also purchased at least 6 Boeing 737 jets worth nearly $140 million for dedicated deportation flights, a move critics say signals a sharp expansion of deportation. And the crackdown isn't just about deportations. President Trump has launched an attack on birthright citizenship, claiming it was originally intended for the children of slaves, not for rich immigrants seeking to make their entire family US citizens. Officials warn that visas will be denied to those that they suspect plan to give birth in the United States to claim citizenship for the child. Yet, in his usual transactional fashion, the US president claimed he wants to enable companies to hire and retain high-skilled talent in the country through his Trump Gold Card, or what he calls the $1 million gift to the government.
some tremendous people that wouldn't be allowed to stay. You know, they graduate from college, they have to go back to India, they have to go back to China, they have to go back to France, they have to go back to wherever they came from. Very hard to stay. It's a shame. It's ridiculous things. We're taking care of that. The companies are going to be very happy.
The Trump administration is redefining who belongs in America and who does not. As these policies take hold, millions are asking, is the land of opportunity closing its doors or simply deciding who gets in?
From visas to citizenship, from skilled workers to mass deportations, the rules are changing faster than the world can actually keep up. Families are separated, dreams are being put on hold. Millions across the globe and in India are left wondering if the US still stands for opportunity or fairness. Or is it a case that Donald Trump wants to push and its administration wants to push only the much touted and highly paid for gold card as compared to some of the other opportunities that several other visa mechanisms throw up? Is America protecting its borders, or is it turning its back on the very ideals it championed to the world, is what many are asking. India's defense industry is now beginning to punch way above its weight on the global stage. Moving from a long-time importer to an emerging manufacturer of advanced weaponry and military systems, this shift is gaining international attention as 3 Indian defense firms have risen into the SIPRI list of the world's top 100 arms makers, a sign that Make in India is starting to translate into real industrial clout. Although Indian companies still account for a relatively modest 1.1% share of global arms revenue, the steady increase in arms sales highlights the country's accelerating capabilities. And let's take a look at what this really adds up to. Global arms race is heating up. India is climbing up as China slips in that pecking order. India's top 3 defense firms grow at 8.2% to about $7.5 billion. And that includes Hindustan Aeronautics, which leads the list amongst Indian companies. And there's been a 24% boost in Bharat Electronics growth to about a little under $2.5 billion. And this is on account of domestic demand, specifically for radars and several other equipment. Then let's take a look at Mazagon Dock, which focuses on naval capabilities. A 9.5%, actually almost 10% growth to $1.2 billion. Chinese defense firms have slipped amidst the massive purge that is being taken place in the Chinese PLA led by Xi Jinping. And who's gaining? It's the Indian military companies. Now, India is the apple of big tech's eye, quite literally, viewers. And here's what all that has been announced in the last couple of weeks. In fact, just about 10 days. $15 billion of investment by Google for its largest Vizag data center. Microsoft, $17.5 billion of investment, its largest in Asia. Add to this Cognizant's sweeping plans to boost investment, Amazon's $30 billion investment by 2030. Then there are MOUs that Intel has signed with Tata for semiconductor manufacturing. Did someone say dead economy? Well, it's far from that. And what is the true potential that we are talking about? And where does this take the India tech landscape? Let's get in a voice to talk more on this. We have with us Mr. Shashi Shekhar Vempati, who's the co-founder of Deep Tech, to talk more about how this all adds up. Sir, there have been a slew of announcements. It almost seems like all roads lead to Bengaluru. They lead to India right now as far as tech is concerned.
Absolutely. I think it's a very interesting series of announcements that you just shared. And it also is happening in the context of a larger milieu here, right? Because India is set to host the AI Impact Summit, the global summit, early next year in February in Delhi. And all this action that you're seeing builds up to India playing host to the entire world, both in terms of governmental heads as well as the big tech leaders on where AI is headed in the next few years. So in that sense, a lot of these announcements are creating the background, the framework for how the action in AI will be shifting to India, as India being the largest digital consumer markets, and it is also an open democracy, unlike China, which has placed all sorts of restrictions and is pursuing its own path in terms of AI. I think Indian AI markets and the Indian consumer are of great interest to the big tech platforms,
So
which is why
which brings me to ask, sir, there are two facets. One, of course, is the public AI, the larger utilization and usage of AI from a public service delivery point of view. And then there are these private tech aspirations that exist, which is why all these companies have come here. Now, help us understand, how do you see this tech landscape in India from a job point of view, from becoming a major player in the larger tech supply chain point of view? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, sure. So if you look at what's been happening in India, right, we've seen the emergence of the gig economy in a big way. The gig economy has emerged as a big employer, be it ride sharing, be it quick commerce, and so on. So the algorithm economy is going to become more and more important. And with AI, automating a lot of functions, I think it's extremely important that we in India get ahead of the impact of AI. So having these investments, having these big data centers, and these foundation models being built in India is very important. It's also important that we need to look at what are the enterprise use cases that will drive adoption going forward, which will bring efficiency, which will improve productivity, which will perhaps create a whole new class of jobs. While some existing jobs may become redundant, what AI is potentially likely to do is create a whole new class of jobs, and I think that is what we need to be prepared for. So between public service delivery, which is what you were mentioning, the digital public goods. If you look at the Prime Minister, he himself has been championing Bhashini, for example, which is about making content
local languages,
in Indian languages, right, using AI. So that's a great example of public services. Similarly, on the private sector, with all of these gig-based platforms emerging, homegrown platforms, I think it becomes very important for us to look at what are the new class of jobs that we can potentially create using AI.
All right, that's an extremely important aspect you said, and it also brings to forth the fact that job creation and AI can go together, something that has been a big concern around the world, more so of course in India as well, where we do need to create massive jobs because we have the largest young population anywhere in the world. I'm going to leave it there. Mr. Shashi Shekhar Vempati joining us to give his take on how things add up as far as India's tech landscape is concerned. Bangladesh announced its much-delayed national elections, even as the nation's president said his voice has been stifled and he plans to leave midway through his tenure. Bangladesh's president, who was the only constitutional authority left in the country after the elected government was overthrown, says his portraits have been removed from all government offices. The humiliation of the president is symptomatic of what the nation has undergone ever since the so-called student revolution overthrew Hasina's government last year in August, and the interim advisor came in. Since then, there have been many efforts to completely scrub Bangladesh's history. By the way, the sitting president of Bangladesh now has seen his press department being taken away from him. It's a clear effort to censor and stifle the president, Shahabuddin, who is the only sitting president to face this kind of insult. All right, viewers, as we wrap things up, well, the classic India Ascent story. UNESCO has added Diwali to its intangible cultural heritage list, giving one of India's most celebrated festivals a major global honor. The announcement, which was made on UNESCO's social media, recognizes Diwali as living heritage. Prime Minister Modi welcomed the move, saying people in India and across the world are thrilled, calling the festival a reflection of India's cultural values and civilizational ethos. With that, we wrap things up on this edition of India Ascents. Thanks so much for watching.